you, Mary, and thank you so much for inviting me to speak at this stupendous Toastmasters special meeting. I'm honored and so happy to be here. When I first started working on my speech, I was thinking about you and what would be of interest to you, and I thought, we're such a diverse group, men and women, people in different phases of their lives, different backgrounds and different occupations. So what's a common thread? Well, you're all here to better yourselves, so you're interested in that. And I'm assuming that you're all interested in living a life that you love. So that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. Who here has a social media account? Anyone? Who here loves social media? Who here hates social media? A little bit of both. Most people seem to have a love-hate relationship with social media. And a big reason for the hate part of it is because people wind up seeing other people on social media and comparing themselves. So then they're not happy with what they see. You may be surprised by this, but I hear this from so many people. For example, there's this stay-at-home mom who's home with this. She logs onto social media, and she sees that her neighbor, who's also a stay-at-home mom, has posted this picture. Then there's the recent college grad who was just dumped by her boyfriend and is struggling to lose 25 pounds. She goes onto social media and sees that a girlfriend has posted this. And then there's the family who stayed at home for spring break. They spent the week seeing pictures of everyone else in town on the beach in the Caribbean or Florida. Even if you're not on social media, this is all around us. Long before social media existed, people have been comparing themselves to other people. And people have been trying to make themselves look good. People show us the best of themselves. They show us the person they want to be and the life they want to be living. And because of that, we often compare ourselves to a situation that isn't quite what it appears to be. The key to living a life you love is to focus on the good things that you have, the person that you are, and what you're doing. What other people are doing does not change that. The summer after my freshman year of high school, I signed to go up on a cycling tour through California. A week before the trip, there was an orientation meeting. When I arrived at the meeting, I walked into a room full of boys, and I immediately felt uneasy. It turns out there was another girl in the room, but she had a mohawk, and I didn't realize it was a girl. There were 12 boys and 2 girls in our group. The leader sat us down in a row, and he started talking about the trip, and then he had us each introduce ourselves and talk a little bit how we had been preparing. I was sitting at the end of the row, and as each boy spoke, I got more and more nervous. Each boy talked about how athletic he was, and the sports he played, and how much he lifted, and how much he had been cycling. I, on the other hand, had hardly been cycling at all. I was very active. I ran cross country in the fall, played basketball in the winter, and track and field in the spring. I was MVP of my cross country and basketball team, and I was first or second in all my events in track. And I assumed that the conditioning for those sports would have left me in good enough shape for the cycling trip. But as each boy talked, I got more and more nervous, and I started doubting myself and thinking, I'm never going to be able to keep up with these boys. When the other girl spoke, she looked around at the boys and nodded like she was one of them and talked about how much she had been cycling. By the time it was my turn to speak, I felt like I was going to throw up. I talked about how I'd been running and playing basketball. The boys that actually did pay attention to me looked unimpressed. I added in that I had been cycling, which was true, but I had only been doing it about a week since school and track ended. I went home and cried to my mother. She told me not to worry, she told me I was in great shape and I would be fine, but I didn't feel better. And I didn't have enough time to cycle enough to bring back up my confidence. And a week later, I was on a plane to California with a bunch of boys I didn't know and a pit in my stomach. next day we started cycling. We started out in a group together, and as we rode for a few miles, we started to spread out. There were two boys, Adam and Will, who jockeyed for position at the head of the group. And after the first few miles, they pulled far ahead. And their competition turned to bonding, and they took turns cycling side by side, and together they wound up working the hills, taking in the sights, and enjoying the ride. How I know all of this is that I was there with them. From the first day and through the whole rest of the trip, the three of us rode together, so far ahead of the rest of the group that we couldn't even see them. Now, maybe those boys exaggerated how much preparation they had done for the trip, or maybe I was just in that much better shape than them. But either way, I hadn't even considered those options. I let what other people said about themselves make me doubt myself. I let it affect my confidence, even though I knew I had an abundance of evidence to prove that I was prepared and I would be fine. Maintaining self-confidence isn't always easy, but it will help you to do things outside your comfort zone with excitement rather than dread, which makes it a key to living a life you love. It will also help you stay true to yourself, which is another key to living a life you love. When I was old enough to babysit, I offered myself up for the job. Not because I liked little kids, I didn't, but because I wanted to make some money. I had friends that loved babies and loved playing with little kids, but I never did. I always assumed that when I grew up, I would get married and have kids, but that was because that's what everyone did, not because I thought it sounded like a great idea. And as I got older, I started to realize I didn't have to do what everyone else was doing. And I started to think that I might not want to have children. I once said this to my mother, and she said, just wait till your friends start having kids and you'll change your mind. But as my friends started having children, it only reinforced my opinion. I read an article in which a woman wrote about deciding to not have children, and she wrote, I think if I had a child, I would love the child, but I don't think I would love my life. And I thought, yes, that's how I felt. And I knew I didn't want to have children. And I knew it wasn't going to be what people expected of me, but I didn't know what I would wind up dealing with. I didn't know that some people would find it difficult to have a conversation with me because I don't have children. I didn't know that people would be so bold to presume they knew how I should live my life and to tell me how I should live my life. I didn't know the things people would have the audacity to say to me. I didn't know that I would lose a good friend after getting in a fight about whether I should have kids or not. Just last month, the day before Mother's Day, I went to the dry cleaner. I said Happy Mother's Day to the owner because I knew she was a mother. She had mentioned her daughter before. She said, you don't have kids, right? And I said, no, I don't have kids. She said, not yet. I laughed and I thought, either my moisturizer is working extremely well, or some people just can't fathom a woman never having kids. But I was used to that. I was used to people immediately asking me after being introduced to me, how old are your kids? Or what grade are your kids in? And I would say, I don't have kids. And then they would say, well, when you have kids. It wasn't always easy to take in people's reactions when I said I didn't have children. Sometimes people looked confused. Sometimes people looked judgmental. Sometimes people looked like they wanted to run away from me. I didn't like any of those looks, but I knew what I wanted and what I didn't want, and I was sticking with it. I knew it was the best decision for me, and that I was the one who was going to have to live with that decision. Staying true to yourself isn't always easy, but it's necessary to live a life that you truly love. You may have to deal with people's confusion or judgments or fear about choices you make, but if you know in your heart If there's something you do or do not want to do, stick with it. You're the one who has to live with the results of your decisions. Do your best to make sure you're happy with them. Now, at some point, you'll probably wind up changing your mind about something. You want to go in a different direction, make a different choice, and those choices may be different than your friends or family or neighbors would choose. And that's okay. Just know that people will have things to say about it. And you may wind up having doubts about what you're about to do, and that's okay too. After college, I got a job in New York City, which was exactly what I wanted at the time. I spent the next 15 years working my way up the corporate ladder. But at the end of the day, I was unfulfilled and wanted to make a change. In 2009, I was working for the New York Times, and I was chosen to be on a committee that was tasked with improving efficiencies and communication throughout the company. We were going to meet for 3 full days in a row. On the second day, we started talking about where we wanted to be in 1, 3, and 5 years. We were supposed to be thinking about where our individual departments wanted to be and the company as a whole. But I couldn't help but thinking about where I personally wanted to be in 1, 3, and 5 years. And that was far away from my job at the New York Times. I wanted to pursue my passion for fitness and become a personal trainer. But I was scared. I was scared to start over, scared to leave my job, my office, my steady paycheck, my benefits. I was scared to go from being the person who knew how to do everything to be the person who didn't know how to do anything. And I was scared what people would say about me. I was going to leave a real job with a prestigious job title to go work in a gym. Surely people would have not nice things to say about that. The end of the third day of the committee meetings, I walked into my boss's office and sat down across from her. She started talking about a training program for managers she was going to be taking and asked me if I wanted to join her in it. I leaned back in my chair, closed her door, took a deep breath, and said, "What I really want is an exit package." My boss and coworkers were shocked. They had questions and concerns, but I had already said all those things to myself, so I had answers. Yes, I knew everything I was leaving behind. Yes, I knew I was taking a big risk. Yes, I knew it was going to be a lot of work. Yes, it was really what I wanted to do. I knew what I wanted and I was going for it. And I've never regretted going for it. I believe making that change was one of the best decisions of my life and that I'm better for it. Making a big change isn't easy, and stepping outside your comfort zone is hard, but doing it forces us to adapt to new things, learn new things, and acquire new skills, which is why we need to continue to do it throughout our lives. I first heard about Toastmasters in October of 2013, and I thought, that's really something I should do. I had a fear of public speaking, and I was not comfortable speaking to strangers. I looked up where and when the closest meetings to me were, and I made note of it, but it took me over a year to actually step foot in the door. I finally decided I was going to go at the end of 2014. I sent an email to a club saying I would like to attend their meeting the week between Christmas and New Year's. I got a response back from someone named Paul Rafich. He said that he was not going to be at the meeting, but that the other members would be happy to have me there. The day of the meeting, I sat in my driveway, in my car, clenching the steering wheel, a queasy feeling in my stomach, having a debate with myself about whether I really needed to go. The side of me that thought I should go won the debate, but only by a very small margin. And as I drove to the meeting, I continued that debate. Due to the holiday, there were only 3 other people in the meeting. I got called up for table topics. I walked up to the front of that room, shaking and sweating, and answered the question in well under a minute with lots of filler words. I thought, good times. The people seemed very nice, but I wished to never see them again. I wished to stay at home with my dog and do whatever it was I normally do between 12 and 1 on Mondays, because whatever that was, it wasn't giving me major anxiety. But it also wasn't making me any better. So the next week I got back in the car and I told myself, it'll get easier. Then I remembered a quote I have up on the wall in my gym that says, it doesn't get easier, you just get better. And I knew how my personal training clients felt. I wanted to get better, I just wished it wasn't such a painful process. But it almost always is. It isn't easy to continue to better yourself, just like it isn't easy to always maintain self-confidence and stay true to yourself and to make a big change. There will be doubts and fears and judgments of your own and from other people. But if you are clear about what you want and who you want to be, and you work to achieve that, you'll be on your way to living a life you truly love.